Hi everyone. I hope you're all having a great consolidation week, taking the chance for a bit of rest and relaxation, but also hopefully taking a chance to catch up on some of our readings and maybe doing some posts on the discussion board. Now that assignment 1A has been completed and you have the results for them, I thought I would just give you some tips for assignment 1B as it's so similar. So I've created this tip sheet for you with some suggestions of things that I've noticed from assignment 1A that could help you now with assignment 1B. But before I go into that in more detail, I would like to talk to you about the marking for these assignments in this unit. So in this unit, we're using a holistic rubric. A holistic rubric is different to an analytic rubric where you get the assignments broken up into parts and each part gets its own mark and then you add the marks up to get a final mark at the end. In this case, we are looking at the whole of the assignment as one piece. So for each section of the rubric, you have to have achieved all of the dot points in that section to actually achieve that mark level. That being the case, really the most important section is the pass section, because if you miss something in the pass section, you're going to fail the unit because you have to actually pass everything in the pass section to achieve a pass in the assignment. So an example of this for assignments 1A and 1B could be, for example, ICT, and this happened to a few people with assignment 1A. You might do a brilliant job at identifying the writing needs of Harper and Madison. You might choose some great strategies and develop a wonderful lesson to help them with their writing. You might do a fabulous job of comparing those strategies and how they address the needs of Harper and Madison. But if you haven't included ICT in your lesson, then you're going to actually fail because ICT is included in the pass section criteria. So it's very, very important that you are completely familiar with the pass criteria and make sure that when you're going through assignment 1B and before you submit, making sure that you have covered every aspect of that pass criteria before you submit your assignment. Right, so now let's look at the tips that I've given you for assignment 1B. Okay, let's go through these tips in detail now. So tip number 1, use the resources provided on the discussion board in the unit information and via the collaborates. So I've worked in a number of units for Swinburne Online, and I have to say that our unit coordinator, Juliana, in this unit really does give you some great support for these assignments. The Padlets that are provided for each assignment really are marvellous. They actually really set out for you all the information you need to complete these assignments successfully. So if you haven't looked at the Padlet and the information on it about assignment 1B, I suggest that you really have a good look at it. It sets out for you what strategies you should be looking at, where you can find them in the e-text. It identifies the needs for you. And while these are suggestions and you can do your own, these are the result of consultation between all the ELAs, and so you can be pretty sure that you're on the right track if you use these. In there you will find the flipped collaborate. Now, unfortunately, the sound recording for the flipped collaborate for this assignment is quite poor, so you're going to have your volume turned up pretty high to hear it, but the information there is invaluable. So listen and watch the flipped collaborate. It also goes through everything in detail for you. The assignment information on the discussion board sets out very clearly what the requirements are, and it also has the rubric there that I was talking about earlier. So you really do need to closely look at the rubric for the assignment, and as you're working your way through completing your assignment, make sure that you are meeting all those requirements in that pass level. The other thing, of course, is the live collaborates, and our live collaborate will be on Monday the 30th at 7:30 p.m. Australian Eastern Standard Time, and there will be a chance for you to ask any questions live to get some answers, but also, of course, remember to ask as many questions as you like in the question and answer thread on the discussion board. And share your questions, because I'm sure that you're not the only one who's got that question. So if you share the question on the discussion board, the answer could be helping other people as well. All right, now, point number 2. Make sure everything aligns. The need, the strategy, and the lesson should all align together. Now, this is very important. Okay, so your first step when you're looking at the writing extracts for Harper and Madison is to identify the needs. Now remember, on the Padlet, some needs have been identified for both of these students. So what you could do is maybe pick one of those and then look at the extract and work out what it is about the extract that tells you that that is the student's need. All right, so work out what need you're going to discuss, and then pick your strategy. Now, the strategies are also listed on the Padlet, and you can just choose which strategy you think you would use as Harper or Madison's teacher to meet this need that you have identified for them. Once you've identified your strategy that you're going to use, you're going to use that strategy as the basis of a lesson, a specific lesson that is about teaching Harper or Madison that need that you've identified. So they all need to align together. So if the need is full stops and you decide that you're going to use the modelled writing strategy, then your lesson will be about you modelling how to use full stops correctly. Everything must align together. Okay, point number 3, be specific. Identify one need per student supported by evidence from the writing extract. Relate everything else to this need. Now, as I've said in the Padlet, the needs have actually been identified for you. Now, you're welcome to find other needs, but if you're not sure, look at the needs that have been identified for Harper and Madison on the Padlet and work on those. Now, when you're identifying your need, you need to support this with evidence from the writing extract. To achieve a higher mark, you need to show that you've looked at the writing extract and understand what the writing extract is showing you. So if you're talking about punctuation, for example, look for examples in the writing extract that show that there is a need for that student to work on their punctuation. You need to relate everything else in the folio to this need. So after you've identified your need, you then choose your strategy that you think will help with teaching that need, and then you develop your lesson, which you will be working with the student to help them with that need. And for part 2, when you're comparing the strategies, you're going to be relating them back to that student's need. Just when you do identify the need, so the examples given on the Padlet, a couple of them were punctuation and grammar. These are actually huge areas. When you look at the information about punctuation, spelling, grammar in the e-text, you'll see that there's a lot of different aspects of punctuation. There are a lot of different aspects of grammar. So once you've identified that that's the need you're going to focus on, now drill down to be really specific. So look at the writing extract, and you might decide that that student needs to work on punctuation, but specifically, say, full stops, for example. So be very, very specific about what the need is. Don't try and just cover punctuation. Cover one aspect of punctuation, or cover one aspect of grammar, or cover one aspect of spelling. So don't be general with these needs. Really drill down and pick a specific aspect of that need for that student. Point number 4, the lesson should be explicit. Describe exactly what will happen. The ICT should enhance the lesson and not be tacked on at the end as an afterthought. All right, so the lesson is probably a little bit tricky in that you don't have a huge number of words. So we're not looking for a full-blown lesson plan like you would have if you were out on placement. We're just looking for a paragraph that's describing exactly what will happen in this lesson. So if your lesson, for example, is about teaching the students full stops for punctuation, and you're using the model writing strategy, you'll describe exactly what will happen. So you'll be describing what the teacher will be doing. The teacher will be using, will be writing a couple of sentences on the whiteboard and thinking aloud to describe where to put the full stops. You've got to describe the teaching methods. Be explicit. You might even describe what sentences the teacher might write, for example. And then you should be looking at your ICT. Now you might include ICT with this by saying that the teacher is modelling the sentences on by writing them on the interactive whiteboard. So that could be a way of including your ICT into your lesson. But the ICT shouldn't just be something extra to do afterwards. It should be part of the lesson. It should enhance the actual lesson, or it should follow directly on and not be totally unrelated to the need and to the teaching strategy. So the ICT should match the need and it should match the teaching strategy. It should be part of your lesson. Point number 5, always support your work with academic sources. Refer to the eText and other scholarly sources. So your go-to text is always going to be the eText for all of your assignments in this unit. So Fellows and Oakley have all the information you need about the strategies, about the needs for reading and writing and so on. However, if you want a higher mark, you're always going to be looking for other scholarly sources to support your work. As a general guide, we usually suggest that you have at least one academic source to support your work per paragraph. So you should always be trying to back up what you're saying with evidence from an appropriate academic source. Now, you need to be a little bit careful here because especially working with ICT, and when you're looking at your ICT, it can be easy to sort of use information from the makers of the app or the authors of the particular program that you might be suggesting that could be used for your ICT. But they're not particularly good sources of information because they're trying to sell you something, and so they will have a bias. So when you're trying to support your work, try to find more scholarly sources of information. An example might be that you might suggest, well, from assignment 1A, people suggested say Reading Eggs, for example, and backed up their information about that with quotes from Reading Eggs. So that's not such a great idea to do because as I said, they're trying to sell you something, so their information is actually going to be biased. Always look for scholarly sources of information. Point number 6. Now this is really important, and it's going to get more important for assignment 2. So this is a good chance to really practice here. Number 6, refer to the Australian curriculum. Now these students are early years primary students. The whole basis of this unit is talking about early years primary age students. And I know many of you are doing the early childhood degree. However, that degree does take you up to age 8 and students that would be working in primary schools as well. So you do need to make yourself familiar with the Australian curriculum, which is the curriculum that all of the state's curriculums are based on as well. The students for this folio aren't specifically identified as to what year level they are, so we don't know whether they're actually year 1 students or not, but we do know that they are early years primary students, so we know that they're either going to be foundation, year 1 or year 2. When you've identified your needs for the student, go to the Australian curriculum and look at the foundation, look at the English writing curriculum, and then look at the foundation, year 1 and year 2 content descriptors, and see if you can find some matching descriptors to that need. And you will. When you go in there and have a look around there, you will find that there are content descriptors in the English curriculum that match needs of punctuation, grammar, spelling, all of those identified needs that we've talked about earlier. And so you might, when you've identified your need, you might refer to the curriculum in your folio then, or you might wait until your lesson and you might refer to the curriculum and include the content descriptors that match your lesson there. But at some stage you really should be, for each student, referring to the content of the Australian curriculum English and saying how what you've identified matches to the Australian curriculum. Finally, point 7 is about part 2, where you compare the strategies. Now, a lot of you, when you compared your strategies for assignment 1A, did a general comparison. So you might have compared guided reading and modelled reading and just did a general comparison of what the differences and the similarities are. That's not what the rubric asks you to do. The rubric actually asks you to relate your comparison to the students and their needs. So for assignment 1B, it's exactly the same. When you compare the strategies you've chosen, relate it back to the students and their needs. So if you say, for example, you used modelled writing and independent writing, talk about whether you might have chosen modelled writing for Harper and independent writing for Madison. Decide, would both strategies suit Harper? Maybe they would, maybe they wouldn't, with the need that they have. Would both strategies suit Madison? Why or why not? And then, of course, you can look at also the benefits and the limitations of each strategy in those comparisons. But make sure you relate your comparison back to the students and their needs. I hope this has been useful for you, and I look forward to your questions on the discussion board. And I also look forward to catching up with you all on Monday the 30th at our live Collaborate.